Thank you, Tree, and thank you, Black Squirrel. Man, it's a good-looking shop now. I'm going to read, as Colin said, some translations or mistranslations or detranslations. It seems you need a kind of fancy prefix on them these days. But translations of the much beloved Spanish poet, Cuban poet, Nicolas Guillen. I first came across him in 2003 when I was visiting Cuba. And I'd landed in Havana, but my luggage landed somewhere else. So I was kind of stuck there with not much more than a toothbrush, and I had to wait because Air Canada said they had it, but they weren't sure when they could get it to me. So I waited in Havana for a few days, and I had a backpack with some heavy English novels in it. And I got through them fairly quickly and was walking around the main square in Havana, which is full of little shops and little kiosks and lots of booksellers. And I found this little book. It's called El Gran Zoo by Nicolas Guillen. I'd never heard of him before. And I traded 3 big English novels for this little book. And I have translated this book every year since 2003. And when I look back on it, it's interesting to see the variation in the translations. Some of them are radically different than the original, and some of the times they keep moving farther away. But surprisingly enough, some of them come back and gradually move back so that they're not that terribly far from the original. The book was a fairly popular one. Guillen was born in 1902, and he died in 1989 from Parkinson's. He was a black Cuban writer, and he wrote in very typical Spanish speech patterns. His language was very straightforward. His rhythms are pretty clear and pretty straightforward, which suited my really rudimentary Spanish really well. And you'll hear that, particularly when Ramon reads, I'm sure. He was exiled. His father worked, among other things, at a print shop and was shot, along with all the other folks in the print shop by members of the Cuban regime at the time, and Guillen never forgot that, and he was not a supporter of the Mercado or the Batista regimes that came before Castro, and he was exiled for a number of years. Do you know where he went, Ramon? Was it? Yeah, okay. Anyway, but he did come back after Castro took power, and was, for the most part, well loved by that regime. Not always. He was also a big supporter of what in Cuba they call country music. Here, I think we'd probably call it roots music. It's the typical music of the countryside. Wrote about it extensively, wrote songs. That was one of the things that attracted me to him. I'd heard of some of his songs, but I'd never heard of this book before. And like I said, I've translated it frequently. I'm going to read just a few poems to start with. They're all short. They're pretty simple. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're angry, sometimes they're sarcastic. And his politics will, I think, be pretty evident to you. Some of them are also about the weather and natural phenomena in Cuba, and given what's been happening there in the last few days, very apropos. First one, and this is the opening one in the book, is called Caribbean. How can they put the sea in the Grand Zoo? It sings like crystal. It sings in the drifting. It sings in all the salt animals. It has a blue back and a belly packed with coral, gray fins like a hurricane. It will bite you, not if, but when. So it's called the Great Bear. He populated his zoo with creatures both real and imaginary, and sometimes because he wanted to preserve them, and sometimes because he wanted to punish them. And so there are all sorts of different things in the Great Zoo, including a watch and an atomic bomb and various dreams and lots of animals. This is called Great Bear. Somebody needs to train this bear that was captured on June 4th, 1964, which is the launch of Sputnik, and still survives in the forms of attention. The stars on its skin are the bones of light. And out there, the light doesn't always find you. And one more, and then I'll ask Ramon to come up and we'll read some in Spanish. This is called KKK, and he was the Ku Klux Klan, and there were clearly he was not happy with the Klan or with the mob that ran much of Havana, and that's very apparent in his work. This repetition comes from somewhere and is unconsolable. First of all, it is carnivorous, hunts all night for the edible parts of light or a whiff of stars. That's how we would describe it to you, if we had to describe it. And okay, we have to. But we couldn't feed it even if we wanted. There's no food around for miles. Okay, Ramon, come and join me. As Colin told you, this is Ramon's Sepulveda. He's not Cuban, but his Spanish is a hell of a lot better than mine is. And he knows more about Guillen than I do. We were talking beforehand, and I found out lots of stuff that I didn't really know. And we're going to read 4 or 5 additional poems from the manuscript, and Ramon will read them in Spanish as well, and just so you get a sense of what they sound like, and if you do happen to know any Spanish, you might get a sense of how far I've drifted away from the originals. This one is called Speculators. Day traders and fund managers and the rest of the bailout pets, bird-like washouts, hedge their cages. They sit there and speculate. The trumps and vultures want to be cruel and observable at the same time. They eat their young. The mad one, with a tail of ashes, strokes its past to get off. And the so-called high flyers that suck blood and drift like shadows over the sea, give them the cages. Let them trade their feathers, whatever else happens to the world.
Los usureros, monstruos ornitoformos, en anchas jaulas negras, los usureros. Hay en el copete blanco, gran usurero real, y el usurero buitre de las grandes llanuras, y el torpedo vulgar que devora sus hijos, y la rabidaga de cola cenicienta que devora sus padres, y el vampiro mergánzar que chupa sangre y vuela sobre el mar. En el ocio forzado de sus enormes jaulas negras, los usureros cuentan y recuentan sus plumas y se las prestan a interés.
The rivers. Here's the cage of snakes, coiled around themselves, like rivers coiled around themselves, like the spring-loaded triggers coiled around themselves, and still dreaming of their true homes in the suburbs and their vocabularies in the retrieval system with its lost tribes of their long legs and their hurries. Kids laugh and throw them lettuce, and then the whole forest. The great rivers wake up. They swallow everything.
Los ríos. He aquí la jaula de las culebras. Enroscados en sí mismos, duermen los ríos, los sagrados ríos. El Mississippi con sus negros, el Amazonas con sus indios. Son como los sunchos poderosos de unos camiones gigantescos. Riendo los niños le arrojan verdes islotes vivos, selvas pintadas de papagayos, canoas tripuladas y otros ríos. Los grandes ríos despiertan, se desenroscan lentamente, engullen todo, se hinchan, a poco más revientan y vuelven a quedar dormidos.
Hunger, all teeth and eyes, a menu pushed back by the recombinant gods. It squeezes like a boa till it is empty of itself, and then there it is again. The specimen shown here was caught in the suburbs of Mumbai, but exists in the same form more or less everywhere. It can think like you. When it's beside you, you'll know it's there.
El hambre. Esta es el hambre, un animal. Todo colmillo y ojo, nadie lo engaña ni distrae. No se harta en una mesa, no se contenta con un almuerzo o una cena. Anuncia siempre sangre, ruge como león, aprieta como boa, piensa como persona. El ejemplar que aquí se ofrece fue cazado en la India, suburbios de Bombay, pero existe en estado más o menos salvaje en otras muchas partes. No acercarse.
The clouds. The cloud room has 84 clouds, and more are coming. They come from everywhere, and they last all day. They rub the morning light, and it rubs back. They get up off their mats of cotton with an overdetermined notion of supply and demand. They come from all over. Black ones with fat heads like a hangover, and those that claim to love the sky. Clouds like angels, like the bodies of young women, like a map of extinctions and disappearance. Kangaroos, lions. There are even dead clouds. Northern ones shipped on ice from Greenland, Norway, Newfoundland, unable to survive the travel.
Las nubes. El nubario, capacidad 84 nubes. Una experiencia nueva porque hay nubes de todo el día y de muchos países diferentes. La dirección anuncia más. Larguilenguas de pájaro rojizas, las matutinas hechas al poco sueño labrador y a las albas vacías, detenidas de algodón seco y firme, las matronales fijas del mediodía. Como serpientes encendidas, las que anuncian a véspero curiosidad. Las hay de Uganda, movidas por los vientos del gran lago Victoria, las de Turquino, bajas, las de los Alpes marítimos, las de Pico Bolívar, negras, de gordas tetas, las de tormenta. También nubes románticas, como por ejemplo las que empañan el cielo del amor, las coloreadas de hace 60 años en los augurios de Noel, nubes como ángeles, nubes con forma de titán, de mapas conocidos, Inglaterra, de canguro, león, en fin, un cargamento respetable. Sin embargo, las de raza polar, rarísimas, no hubo manera de traerlas vivas. Llegaron en salmuera, expresamente de Groenlandia, Noruega, Terra Nova. La dirección ha prometido exhibirlas al público en vitrinas.
Cyclone. Some of these things need a chain, a tight chain. Time pours out of it just what you'd expect. From a hurricane like this, recently brought to Cuba from the Bahamas, we should make an example of it. We should annex it to ourselves. It grew up in Bermuda, but has family in Barbados. It visited Puerto Rico and raised hell in Jamaica. It got a record in Guadeloupe and was worse in Martinique. It's too content for its own good. We caught it 2 days ago, but can't hold it any longer.
Ciclón, ciclón de raza, recién llegado a Cuba de las Islas Bahamas, se crió en Bermudas, pero tiene parientes en Barbados, estuvo en Puerto Rico, arrancó de raíz el palo mayor de Jamaica, iba a violar a Guadalupe, logró violar a Martínica, edad 2 días.
Just one more. North Star. It's melting and no one can stop it. 10 million, if not more, tons of ice, frozen light, gas already lost in the structure. In its great vacuum, you can see it over there with our conservation team wrapping it in balls of cotton. But it may not be enough. And in 4 centuries at the most, navigators will need to take something else with them out to sea. What a responsibility. The more we preserve it, the less of it there is.
La estrella polar. Se descongela sin remedio la estrella polar. 10 millones y aún más diarios de toneladas. Hielo, luz fría, gas. Pierde de su estructura este inmenso animal. En los sitios vacíos verán, miren ustedes hacia allá, como nuestro equipo restaurador va colocando masas de algodón. Pero eso no puede bastar. Y dentro de 4 años, a lo sumo, los navegantes tendrán que andar a tiendas por el mar. ¡Qué responsabilidad! El animal que más nos cuesta y el que menos se puede conservar.
And here is the exit panel of El Gran Zoo. Goodbye from the animals. Goodbye for now. Tomorrow will be another day at the Grand Zoo. Follow the arrows to the back and to your left. Salida, sortie, exit. And thank you.